When you look at a river, what do you really see? I mean, beyond just flowing water. Well, today we're going to look at them a little differently, as the planet's most relentless and powerful sculptors. We're going to dive into how these simple streams of water can carve out massive canyons, literally move mountains piece by piece, and even build brand new land from scratch. So it all really comes down to this one big question, right? How in the world can something as soft and fluid as water break down solid rock and then flip the script and use all that rubble to build entirely new landscapes? That's the amazing puzzle we're going to solve together today. Now, there is a scientific term for all this, of course, fluvial processes. It sounds kind of fancy, but it just comes from the Latin word fluvius, which literally means river, and it perfectly captures the two main jobs a river is always doing: carving things up through erosion and building new things through deposition. Probably the easiest way to think about this is to imagine a river as this massive 24/7 construction crew. And this crew has a three-part mission. First up, you've got demolition. That's breaking everything down. Then transportation, hauling all the material away. And finally, construction, using that material to build something new. Okay, so let's start with that first job, demolition. This is where the river is a pure force of nature, an unstoppable erosion machine, just actively carving and reshaping every part of the landscape it touches. But here's the thing, a river doesn't just brute force its way through the land. No, it's way more clever than that. Its demolition crew actually uses a combination of 4 different methods to get the job done efficiently. And this is the really cool part. It's not a one-at-a-time deal. All 4 of these methods are happening at the same time, all working together. It's like this perfectly coordinated attack. You've got the sheer force of the water, physical grinding, and even a quiet little chemical assault, all teaming up to wear down the river's channel. So let's quickly break them down. First, you have hydraulic action. That's just the raw power of water slamming into the riverbanks. Then there's abrasion. This is where the river gets smart and uses the rocks and pebbles it's already carrying, like sandpaper, grinding away at its bed and banks. Attrition is what happens when all those rocks in the water crash into each other, breaking down into smaller, smoother pieces. And last, you have solution. This is the sneaky one, a chemical process where the water itself actually dissolves certain kinds of rock, like limestone. All right, so the demolition crew has done its job. It's broken all this rock and soil loose. But you can't just leave it there, right? All that material has to go somewhere. And this is where the river's haulage team, its transportation system, takes over. And you guessed it, just like with demolition, transportation isn't some simple one-size-fits-all process. The river has 4 distinct ways of moving its cargo, or its load as geologists call it, and it all depends on the size and weight of the material it's trying to move. Let's run through them. For the really big stuff, like boulders, they get rolled and dragged along the bottom. That's called traction. Smaller pebbles and stones get bounced along in this kind of hopping motion, which is called saltation. Then you have the really fine stuff, silt and sand, which is just carried along inside the water itself. That's suspension. And finally, all that material that was dissolved, it's transported invisibly in the water. That's called solution. And that brings us to the final and maybe the most incredible part of the river's job. After all that work demolishing and transporting material, the river's role completely changes. It becomes a builder. This is the construction phase. So what triggers this switch from destroyer to creator? It's actually incredibly simple. It all happens when the river slows down, as it goes from steep mountains to flat plains, or when it flows into a calm lake or the ocean, its speed just plummets, and so does its energy. And think about it, when you run out of energy, you can't carry heavy things anymore, right? It's the same for a river. When it loses that energy, it just can't hold on to its heavy load. It has no choice but to start dropping all the material it worked so hard to carry. We call this process deposition. But the river doesn't just dump everything in one messy pile. It's actually a super organized process. The heaviest things, those big boulders, get dropped first, as soon as the river starts to lose some steam. But the absolute lightest particles, like fine silt, can be carried for hundreds of miles, only settling down when the water's almost perfectly still. This is exactly how massive landforms, like huge river deltas, are built up over thousands of years. So you see, this whole thing isn't just a straight line from A to B to C. It is a powerful, never-ending cycle of destruction and creation that has been shaping and reshaping our planet for billions of years.
So, to wrap it all up, the river erodes the land in one place, it transports all that raw material downstream, and then it uses that exact same material to build new land somewhere else. Demolition, transportation, construction. It's a perfect continuous loop.
So we've seen how rivers are absolute masters at shaping the world. But that leaves us with one last thing to think about. As we build dams, as we change their courses, as we try to manage their flow, how are we shaping them? And maybe more importantly, what will the consequences of that be for the landscapes of tomorrow?